Tonight, allow yourself to slow down and settle into rest as we drift through a quieter chapter of American history. This is a gentle journey into the early company towns of the United States, places shaped by routine, industry, and long, predictable evenings. There's nothing you need to follow closely, nothing you need to remember. Just let the steady rhythm of the story guide your thoughts towards stillness. As your breathing softens, imagine streets growing quiet, lights dimming one by one, and the day gradually releasing its hold. These are calm places, built for order and repetition, perfect for rest. If stories like this help you fall asleep more easily, you're welcome to subscribe so you can return each night to a familiar, peaceful voice and a new quiet chapter of history. And if you're comfortable, feel free to leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight, whether it's a small town, a city apartment, or somewhere in between. It's always comforting to know how far this quiet travels. Now, with nothing else to do, let your eyes grow heavy and let the story begin. Settle into a comfortable position and allow your breathing to slow. There is no need to imagine anything dramatic or unfamiliar. Tonight, we begin in a quiet place, one shaped not by chance, but by intention. The company town was not something that slowly evolved over centuries. It appeared almost at once, rising from open land with a sense of quiet order. Streets were laid out carefully. Homes appeared in neat rows. A workplace stood nearby, steady and central, like a fixed point around which everything else gently turned. From the very beginning, these towns felt complete, as though they had always been waiting to exist. In the early days, arriving at a company town often meant stepping into a ready-made life. There were houses already built, doors freshly painted, windows set to catch the light. Roads were clear and direct, connecting homes to shops, schools, and the place of work without confusion. For many families, this sense of arrangement felt calming. Everything had a place, and every place had a purpose. As evening approached, the town would settle into a predictable rhythm. Work ended at a familiar hour. Footsteps echoed softly along wooden sidewalks. Lamps glowed one by one, casting warm circles of light across porches and pathways. The air carried familiar sounds, distant conversation, a door closing gently, the low hum of life winding down for the night. These towns were often built in quiet landscapes. Some stood near rivers, others near forests or open plains. Wherever they were placed, they seemed to belong there, fitting neatly into the land. Smoke might rise slowly from a central building during the day, but by evening, the air grew still. The land and the town rested together. What made a company town unique was its sense of completeness. Everything needed for daily life existed within a short walk. There was no urgency to travel far, no maze of unfamiliar streets. The town offered a simple loop: home, work, store, school, and back again. This repetition brought comfort, especially at the end of a long day. For those arriving from scattered farms or crowded cities, the orderliness of a company town could feel reassuring. There were clear expectations and familiar routines. Days followed one another with little variation. Nights arrived on time. Sleep came naturally when the world felt settled and predictable. The buildings themselves reflected this calm order. Houses were modest but solid, built to last and easy to maintain. Roof lines were simple, colors were muted. There was nothing flashy or unnecessary. Each structure seemed to understand its role and fulfill it quietly. Streets were wide enough to walk without hurry. Trees were sometimes planted in even rows, growing slowly year after year, offering shade in summer and bare branches in winter. Over time, these trees became part of the town's memory, marking the passing of seasons without drawing attention to themselves. Children grew up knowing every corner of the town. They walked the same routes each day, learning the rhythms of the place without effort. Adults moved through their routines with familiarity, greeting neighbors with a nod or a brief word. There was a shared understanding of how the day unfolded. At the heart of the town stood the workplace, the reason the town existed at all. During daylight hours, it was active and purposeful, but at night, it quieted, becoming just another shape against the darkening sky. Without noise or motion, it blended into the landscape, allowing the town to rest. As darkness deepened, the town grew quieter. Lamps dimmed, windows glowed softly before fading to black. The streets emptied without announcement. Nothing needed to be said. Everyone understood that it was time to rest. In these moments, the company town felt almost timeless. There was little to distract the mind. No rushing traffic, no competing lights. Just the steady presence of a place designed to function smoothly and predictably. It was easy to let go of the day when the world around you did the same. The town did not ask its residents to think far ahead or far away. Life unfolded close to home, within familiar boundaries. This closeness allowed thoughts to slow, worries to shrink, and sleep to arrive without effort. As you listen now, imagine standing at the edge of such a town as night settles in. The air is calm. The streets are still. Everything is exactly where it belongs. There's nothing unfinished, nothing pressing, nothing demanding attention. This is where our story begins, not with noise or conflict, but with quiet structure and gentle order. A place built for purpose, yes, but also a place that knew how to grow quiet at the end of the day. And as the town rests, you are invited to rest as well. Take a slow breath in and let it out gently. This part of the story unfolds in a calm and steady way, just like the lives it describes. For many families, the first impression of a company town was a feeling of relief. After long journeys or uncertain beginnings, here was a place that seemed ready to receive them. Work was not distant or difficult to reach. It stood nearby, solid and dependable, woven directly into the shape of the town. Each morning followed a familiar pattern, and each evening returned people safely back home. The promise of stability was simple and reassuring. A job existed, and it continued day after day. Wages were known ahead of time. There were no sudden changes to navigate, no guesswork required. This predictability allowed people to plan their lives in quiet, practical ways. Meals could be prepared at regular hours. Children could expect their parents home at the same time each evening. Sleep came easier when tomorrow looked much like today. Homes were close enough to workplaces that long commutes were unnecessary. A short walk often replaced long travel, and this saved time and energy. Families shared mornings together. Evenings stretched gently without hurry. The space between work and rest felt balanced and manageable. For newcomers, the town's layout offered immediate familiarity. Streets were clearly marked. Buildings followed consistent designs. Shops stood where one expected them to be. Nothing felt hidden or confusing. This sense of order helped calm the mind, especially for those who had experienced uncertainty elsewhere. Community formed quickly in these environments. Neighbors lived similar lives and followed similar schedules. Children attended the same schools. Adults crossed paths regularly at the store, at work, or during quiet walks home. These repeated encounters created a natural sense of connection without effort or obligation. There was comfort in knowing others nearby understood the same routines. Conversations did not need to explain context. Everyone shared the same frame of reference. Days unfolded together, and nights settled at the same pace. The steady rhythm of wages played a quiet but important role. Knowing when and how one would be paid removed a layer of worry. Bills could be anticipated. Savings, when possible, grew slowly and steadily. This financial clarity supported a broader sense of calm, allowing families to focus on daily life rather than constant adjustment. Schools and basic services were often already in place when families arrived. Children stepped into classrooms without delay. Supplies were available nearby. Even simple routines, like walking to school or visiting a local shop, contributed to a feeling that life was already arranged. The predictability of the environment made it easier to rest. Nights followed days in a reliable sequence. There was little reason to stay awake worrying about unknowns. Lamps were turned off at familiar times. Homes grew quiet together. Sleep arrived as a shared experience across the town. This sense of stability did not require excitement. It existed in small, consistent details. The sound of footsteps at the same hour each morning, the return of voices in the early evening, the gentle quiet that followed. For families who had moved often or worked seasonal jobs, the steadiness felt especially valuable. It offered a chance to pause, to settle, to breathe. Life no longer felt like something that needed constant adjustment. It could simply be lived. Children grew accustomed to regular schedules. learning without realizing it how stability feels. They knew when meals would be served, when school would begin, and when the day would end. These patterns shaped their sense of time in soft, lasting ways. Adults, too, found comfort in routine. Workdays moved forward without surprise. Even tasks that required effort felt manageable when framed by predictability. Knowing what to expect reduced mental strain and allowed attention to soften. As the town moved through seasons, the same patterns held. Winter evenings arrived earlier, but the rhythm remained unchanged. Summer light lingered longer, yet nights still came gently. The town adjusted without disruption, maintaining its steady pace. This promise of stability did not announce itself loudly. It was not dramatic or grand. It existed quietly, in the way life continued without interruption. It was felt more than spoken. Imagine arriving in such a place as evening settles in. Your home is waiting. Tomorrow's plans are already clear. The world around you feels steady and dependable. There's nothing you need to solve tonight. In this calm assurance, rest becomes natural. The mind releases its grip on worry. The body recognizes safety. Sleep follows easily, supported by the quiet confidence that everything is in its place. This is the promise that first drew many families to company towns. A simple, steady foundation on which to rest, both by day and by night. Before there were streets to walk or doors to open, there was only an idea taking quiet shape on paper. This part of the story moves slowly, lingering on the calm process of planning rather than the noise of construction. In offices far from the open land where towns would eventually stand, tables were covered with maps and drawings. Lines were drawn carefully, not hurriedly. Each line suggested a street, a path, a boundary. These early plans did not yet carry the sounds of daily life. They existed in silence, imagined and orderly. Planners considered how the town would flow from one place to another. Streets were positioned to lead naturally toward the center, where work would take place. Homes were arranged in rows that felt balanced and practical. Schools were placed within easy reach, so children could walk safely each morning without long journeys. Nothing was accidental. Each space served a purpose, yet the design aimed to feel simple rather than complex. The town was meant to be easy to understand at a glance. Even on paper, it appeared calm. Rows of houses were drawn with equal spacing, suggesting consistency and fairness. Roof lines aligned. Yards were sized to be useful but manageable. These details, though small, contributed to a larger sense of order that would later define daily life. Shops were positioned where people would naturally pass by. A store near the center meant fewer long trips. Essential goods would be close at hand, part of the everyday route rather than a separate destination. The plan encouraged gentle movement rather than urgency. Schools were drawn into the design as steady landmarks. Their placement reflected the importance of routine and learning, integrated seamlessly into the town rather than set apart. Children's days would follow clear paths, reinforcing a sense of structure from an early age. Public spaces appeared on the page as open areas, simple rectangles or circles, where nothing was built. These spaces were intentional pauses in the layout, allowing the town to breathe. They would later become places for quiet gatherings, rest, or simple moments of stillness. As the plans developed, the town began to feel complete even before it existed. On paper, it already functioned. One could trace a full day's movement with a finger: home to work, work to store, store back home. Everything connected smoothly. The land itself was considered carefully. Planners noted slopes, water sources, and natural boundaries. Streets followed the shape of the terrain when possible, rather than forcing it into rigid forms. This allowed the town to sit comfortably within its surroundings. When construction eventually began, it followed the calm logic of the drawings. Buildings rose where the lines had been. Roads took shape exactly as planned. The transition from idea to reality happened step by step, without sudden change. There was a quiet confidence in this process. Because the town had been imagined thoroughly, there was little need for improvisation. Each phase unfolded in a predictable order, much like the routines that would later define life there. As walls went up and roofs were set in place, the town slowly matched its original vision. The shapes that once existed only on paper now cast shadows on the ground. Windows reflected the sky. Streets connected as expected. Even during construction, there was a sense of calm direction. Workers moved with purpose, guided by plans that left little uncertainty. Each completed building fit into the larger whole, reinforcing the feeling of coherence. Once finished, the town felt familiar to those who moved in, even if they had never been there before. The layout made sense instinctively. There was no need to learn complicated routes. The design guided movement naturally. This clarity reduced mental effort. People did not have to think hard about where to go or how to get there. Their surroundings supported them quietly, allowing attention to rest. Over time, the planned nature of the town faded into the background. Streets simply existed. Buildings stood where they always had. The original drawings were stored away, their purpose fulfilled. Yet the influence of those early plans remained. The town's rhythm, its ease of movement, and its sense of balance all traced back to that first idea on paper. The calm experienced by residents was rooted in careful thought long before the town came to life. Imagine standing at a crossroads in such a town at dusk. The streets align neatly. The buildings sit comfortably in place. There is no confusion, no rush. Everything feels settled. This is the quiet power of planning, not control, but clarity. A town built from an idea that valued order and simplicity, offering a landscape where the mind could rest as easily as the body. As you listen, allow that sense of thoughtful design to settle around you. Let the imagined lines soften into gentle pathways. Let the quiet intention of the place guide you toward rest, just as it guided the town into being. Imagine beginning a slow walk through a town that feels immediately familiar. Even if you have never been there before, there is no need to hurry. The streets are quiet, and the path ahead is clear. The roads stretch out in straight, steady lines, connecting one part of the town to another without confusion. They do not twist or wander. Each street knows where it is going, and so do the people who walk along it. The simplicity makes movement feel easy, almost automatic. As you walk, identical homes line the road on either side. Their shapes repeat gently, one after another, creating a sense of rhythm. Roofs sit at the same height. Porches face the street in quiet unison. Windows reflect the soft light of the sky. Nothing stands out sharply, and nothing demands attention. These homes were designed with purpose rather than decoration. Each one offers shelter, warmth, and familiarity. The repetition is calming, like a pattern that the mind can recognize and then release. There is no need to compare or evaluate. Everything feels balanced. The sidewalks run alongside the streets, wide enough for an easy pace. Footsteps sound soft and unhurried. Trees, when present, are planted at regular intervals, growing steadily year after year. In time, their branches arch gently over the road, adding shade and softness to the straight lines below. As you continue walking, the town gradually reveals its center. The streets converge toward a familiar structure, the factory or mill that gave the town its reason for being. It stands solid and unmoving, visible from many points without dominating the scene. During the day, the central building shaped the town's rhythm, but in this quiet moment, it simply rests, another structure within the orderly layout. Its presence is understood rather than emphasized. Round the central area, other important buildings appear. A store sits within easy reach, placed where paths naturally cross. A school stands nearby, its location chosen so children can arrive safely and without long walks. Each building fits into the plan as naturally as the streets themselves. The spacing between structures feels intentional. There's enough room for air and light to move freely. Yards are modest but open. Nothing feels crowded, and nothing feels empty. The town exists in a comfortable balance. As evening settles in, the straight roads guide the last movements of the day. People return home along familiar paths. Lamps glow softly at doorways. The repetition of the houses creates a visual calm, reinforcing the feeling that the day has followed its expected course. Walking further, you notice how the town's layout encourages routine. The same routes are used each day, allowing the body to move without conscious thought. This familiarity eases the mind, making transitions from activity to rest feel smooth. Even the intersections feel gentle. They are clear and predictable, offering simple choices rather than complicated decisions. Turning left or right feels natural, guided by habit rather than effort. There are no hidden corners or unexpected turns. The town reveals itself fully, without mystery or surprise. This openness contributes to a sense of safety and ease, especially as night deepens. The uniformity of the homes also creates a shared experience. No one stands far apart from others. Lives unfold side by side, connected by the same streets and routines. This closeness fosters quiet understanding, without requiring conversation. As the walk continues, sounds grow softer. A door closes. Footsteps fade. The town seems to exhale, settling into stillness. The straight roads, once busy with movement, now hold only silence and the occasional distant light. Looking down a long street, you can see its full length without obstruction. The view stretches calmly into the distance, ending where the town meets the darkening sky. This visual clarity mirrors the mental clarity the town was designed to support. Over time, residents came to trust these streets. They knew where each road led, how long it would take to reach any destination. There was comfort in this knowledge, a sense that the environment worked with them rather than against them. As you imagine this place, allow your own thoughts to slow. Let the straight lines guide your breathing. Inhale gently, exhale slowly, following the calm, deliberate structure of the town. This was a place where the physical layout supported rest as much as work. The streets did not compete for attention. They simply existed, doing their job quietly and well. And as the town rests now, its streets empty and still, you are invited to rest too. Let the orderly paths fade softly from view. Let the calm repetition settle into your mind. The walk is complete. The town is quiet. Everything is where it should be. Before the town became a lived-in place filled with footsteps and voices, it existed as a quiet vision shaped by careful thought. This vision was not hurried. It unfolded slowly, guided by ideas of balance, usefulness, and calm order. Architects and planners imagined a place where every element worked together without friction. Their goal was not excess or display, but harmony. Buildings were designed to fit comfortably beside one another, creating a sense of unity rather than competition. Nothing was meant to stand apart. Everything belonged. Symmetry played an important role in this vision. Streets mirrored one another. Rows of homes followed consistent patterns. Even the spacing between buildings reflected a desire for balance. This repetition was intentional, offering the eye a sense of rest and familiarity. Materials were chosen with care. Wood, brick, and stone were selected not only for durability, but for how they aged over time. These materials weathered gently, blending into their surroundings rather than resisting them. As years passed, they softened in color and texture, becoming part of the landscape. The planners imagined how sunlight would move across the town throughout the day. Windows were placed to capture natural light. Streets were aligned to allow brightness in the morning and shade in the afternoon. Even these small considerations contributed to an environment that felt calm and predictable. Efficiency was another quiet guiding principle. Buildings were positioned to minimize wasted space and unnecessary movement. Paths between home, work, and daily needs were kept short and direct. This efficiency was not rushed or mechanical. It was gentle, allowing daily life to flow without strain. The vision extended beyond individual structures to the town as a whole. Planners considered how people would move through the space, how they would gather, and how they would retreat into privacy. Open areas were included to provide moments of pause within the structured layout. Even the height of buildings was considered carefully. Taller structures were limited, ensuring that the town never felt overwhelming. The skyline remained low and even, allowing the sky itself to remain a prominent presence. The architects imagined a town that would feel understandable at first glance. There would be no need for signs or directions. The layout itself would communicate how the town worked. This clarity reduced confusion and encouraged ease. In this vision, daily life unfolded smoothly. Morning light touched the same windows each day. Evening shadows lengthened across familiar streets. The town's design supported these natural rhythms rather than interrupting them. There was also an ideal of quiet dignity embedded in the plans. Buildings were sturdy but modest. Decorative details were restrained. The town did not seek attention. It existed to serve daily life without distraction. Planners thought about how sounds would travel through the town. Open spaces allowed noise to disperse. Residential areas were set apart enough to provide quiet at night. This consideration helped create an environment where rest came naturally. The vision was not focused on individual distinction, but on collective balance. Each building contributed to the whole. Each street played its part. The town was imagined as a single, functioning system rather than a collection of separate pieces. As construction followed these plans, the vision gradually became tangible. Walls rose where lines had been drawn. Materials took shape according to careful measurements. The imagined harmony began to exist in physical form. Once completed, the town reflected its original ideals almost without effort. People moving through it sensed the order intuitively. They felt guided rather than constrained. The environment supported their routines quietly. Over time, residents may not have thought about the design consciously. The town simply worked. Its harmony faded into the background, becoming part of daily life rather than something noticed. Yet the influence of that initial vision remained. It shaped how people felt within the space, how easily they moved, how naturally they rested, how quickly they felt oriented. Imagine standing in the center of such a town, looking down a symmetrical street as evening approaches. The buildings align neatly. The materials glow softly in the fading light. There is no sense of urgency, no imbalance to correct. This was the architect's vision, a place where form and function blended seamlessly, where order supported calm, and where daily life unfolded without resistance. As you listen, allow that vision to settle into your thoughts. Let the symmetry soothe your mind. Let the careful planning ease your breathing. The town rests within its design, steady and complete. And within that quiet order, rest feels natural for the place and for you. As the town settled into its steady rhythm, the homes within it revealed quiet variations. They stood as simple reflections of daily life, shaped by purpose and practicality rather than display. Walking slowly through the town, one could notice these differences without needing to judge them. Each home belonged naturally to its place, contributing to the calm order of the whole. Closest to the center of town were the worker cottages. These homes were modest in size, built to provide warmth, shelter, and comfort without excess. Their designs repeated along the streets in gentle patterns one after another, familiar and reassuring. Roofs were pitched at the same angles. Porches faced forward. Windows were placed evenly, allowing light and air to move freely inside. Inside these cottages, rooms were arranged simply. Kitchens opened into living spaces. Bedrooms were tucked quietly away. Nothing felt unnecessary. Everything served a purpose. The design supported daily routines: waking, working, resting without distraction. These homes were often positioned within easy walking distance of the workplace. Morning routines were unhurried. Evenings returned families quickly to familiar doorways. This closeness reinforced the steady rhythm of the day, reducing the effort required to move between work and rest. Further along the streets, homes grew slightly larger. These belonged to supervisors or skilled workers whose roles required additional space. The differences were subtle rather than dramatic. A wider porch, an extra window, a small garden alongside the house. These details added variation without disrupting the overall harmony of the street. Placement mattered as much as size. These homes were often set back a little farther from the road, offering a touch more privacy while remaining connected to the town's flow. Their presence felt natural, part of the gradual transition rather than a sharp division. On quieter streets, sometimes slightly elevated or closer to open land, stood the managers' homes. These houses were larger, with more defined architectural features. Roof lines varied slightly. Materials might include additional brick or decorative woodwork. Yet even here, restraint remained. The homes did not dominate their surroundings. They simply occupied more space within the same calm framework. Gardens were more common around these houses. Trees were planted deliberately. Fences marked boundaries gently, without enclosing the space completely. These homes felt settled rather than imposing, designed to blend rather than stand apart. Despite their differences, all the homes shared a common language of design. Materials matched across the town. Colors remained muted. Architectural details echoed one another. This consistency helped maintain the sense that the town was a unified place, rather than a collection of separate worlds. At night, the differences between homes softened even further. Lights glowed behind curtains. Shadows fell evenly across rooftops. From a distance, the town appeared uniform, its variations hidden beneath the quiet of evening. Children played along the same streets, regardless of which home they returned to at dusk. Neighbors greeted one another without attention to size or style. Daily life flowed across these subtle differences with ease. The placement of homes also reflected thoughtful planning. Worker cottages clustered together, encouraging shared routines and frequent interaction. Larger homes sat slightly apart, allowing quieter spaces while remaining connected to the town's core. Paths between houses were clear and direct. Footsteps followed familiar routes. Over time, these paths became worn into the landscape, marking patterns of movement that repeated day after day. Season by season, the homes aged together. Paint faded evenly. Wood softened. Stone weathered. The passage of time reduced contrast rather than increasing it, further blending the homes into a cohesive whole. From above, the town appeared orderly and balanced. Rows of cottages formed steady lines. Larger homes punctuated the layout without breaking it. The design created a visual rhythm that felt calm and complete. Living within these homes shaped daily experience in quiet ways. Smaller spaces encouraged closeness and routine. Larger spaces allowed solitude and reflection. Each type supported a different pace, yet all moved within the same town rhythm. As evening settled, families returned to their respective homes. Doors closed gently. Lamps were lit. The town grew quiet together, regardless of house size or placement. Sleep arrived across the streets at nearly the same hour. In this way, the variety of homes added texture without tension. Differences existed, but they did not disturb the overall sense of order. The town remained balanced, its design accommodating many lives within a single, steady framework. As you imagine these streets now, allow the image to soften. Homes of many kinds stand quietly, holding the day within their walls. Lights fade. The town rests, and as the town settles into stillness, you are invited to rest as well, carried gently by the calm presence of a place where every home had its place, and every night arrived without hurry. At the center of the town, often along a main street or near the familiar path between home and work, stood the company store. It was a steady presence, neither large nor small, simply there, open when expected, quiet when the day slowed. For many residents, it became part of the natural rhythm of life, woven gently into daily routines. The store was usually one of the first buildings people learned to recognize. Its shape was simple and practical. Large windows faced the street, allowing light to spill inside during the day and glow softly outward in the evening. A door opened easily, without ceremony, welcoming those who stepped inside. Walking into the store felt familiar almost immediately. Shelves were arranged in clear rows. Goods were placed where they could be found without searching. Nothing felt hidden or overwhelming. The layout encouraged calm movement rather than haste. Here, families gathered the items they needed for everyday life. Food staples, simple clothing, tools, and household supplies were all available in one place. This convenience reduced the need for long trips elsewhere, keeping daily life contained within the town's gentle boundaries. Visits to the company store often followed a predictable pattern. A stop after work, a short walk in the early evening, a familiar exchange at the counter. These routines added structure to the day, marking transitions between work and home. For children, the store was a place of quiet curiosity. They learned its layout early, recognizing familiar shelves and displays. Accompanying a parent on a routine visit became part of growing up. Another small rhythm that shaped their sense of time. The storekeeper often became a familiar face. Conversations were brief and friendly, centered on everyday matters. There was no rush. Each visit unfolded at an unhurried pace, reinforcing the calm atmosphere of the town. Over time, the store became more than a place to gather supplies. It served as a point of connection. People crossed paths there naturally, exchanging nods or a few words. These moments of recognition strengthened the sense of shared routine without demanding attention. The regularity of store hours added to the town's predictability. Residents knew when it would open and when it would close. This consistency allowed the day to unfold smoothly, with fewer decisions to make and fewer uncertainties to manage. As evening approached, The store's role shifted gently. The last customers finished their visits. The door closed quietly. Lights dimmed. With its tasks complete, the store rested along with the town. Even when closed, the building remained part of the nightly landscape. Its darkened windows reflected street lamps and passing shadows. It stood as a familiar shape, unchanged, holding the memory of the day's small activities. The store also played a subtle role in marking time. Weekly patterns formed around restocking and regular visits. Seasonal changes were reflected in the goods on the shelves. Without announcing it, the store mirrored the passage of weeks and months. Because it was centrally located, the store became a natural waypoint. Paths passed by it regularly. People adjusted their routes to include it without thinking. This integration made the town feel compact and complete. There was comfort in knowing that everyday needs could be met close to home. This reassurance reduced mental effort, allowing residents to focus on routine rather than logistics. Life felt manageable, supported by familiar structures. At night, after the store closed and the streets quieted, the town felt whole. Nothing was missing. Everything had been attended to. The simple act of knowing the store would be there again tomorrow contributed to a sense of ease. As you imagine this place now, picture the store standing quietly under the evening sky. Its work for the day is done. The shelves are still. The door is closed, but not locked against the future. The town breathes out. Homes glow softly. Streets empty. The routines shaped by places like the company store gently release their hold, allowing rest to take over. In this quiet pause, the store remains what it has always been, a steady presence, shaping daily life not through urgency, but through familiarity and calm repetition. And as the town settles into sleep, you are invited to do the same, comforted by the simple knowledge that everything needed has been provided, and tomorrow will arrive in its usual, predictable way. Each day in the company town unfolded with a familiar beginning. Before clocks were checked or calendars consulted, there was the sound that gently set everything in motion. The factory whistle rose through the morning air, clear and steady, marking the start of the day without urgency. This sound was not sudden or alarming. It was expected. People heard it so often that it became part of the background of life, as natural as the sunrise. When the whistle sounded, doors opened. Lights were turned off inside homes. Footsteps appeared along the streets. The whistle shaped the morning in quiet ways. Families rose at similar times. Breakfasts were prepared with familiar movements. Children gathered their things, knowing the day's rhythm by heart. There was no need to rush. The timing was understood. As the morning settled into work, the town moved with purpose. Streets filled briefly and then emptied. Homes grew quiet. The central workplace became active, holding the town's attention while the rest of the space rested. Inside, homes left behind. Sunlight moved slowly across floors and walls. Curtains shifted gently with passing air. Time passed evenly, marked not by excitement, but by continuity. When midday arrived, another whistle sounded. It signaled a pause rather than a change. Lunch breaks followed predictable patterns. Meals were shared at the same tables, day after day. Conversations repeated familiar topics. The act of eating together became a grounding moment within the larger routine. After lunch, the town returned to its steady pace. Work resumed. Streets remained calm. The day progressed without interruption, guided by the same quiet structure that had shaped it for years. As afternoon light softened, the anticipation of evening grew without being spoken. The town sensed the approaching shift long before it arrived. Shadows lengthened. Movements slowed slightly. The air felt different. Then, the final whistle of the day sounded. It carried across the town, reaching every street and home. The sound marked the transition from effort to rest. Doors opened again. Footsteps returned. The town began to gather itself back together. Evenings followed a rhythm just as steady as the morning. Meals were prepared at familiar times. Families sat together, sharing food in unhurried silence or quiet conversation. There was comfort in knowing when these moments would arrive. After dinner, the town slowed further. Children finished their routines. Adults settled into rest. Lamps were lit, casting warm light that softened the edges of rooms. Outside, the streets grew still. The whistle had shaped not only work but rest. By signaling clear beginnings and endings, It allowed the mind to let go. There was no need to wonder when the day would be over. The sound made it certain, over time. Residents learned to feel the day's progression without hearing every signal. Their bodies adjusted naturally. Sleep arrived at the same hour each night, supported by the predictability of the routine. Week after week, this pattern repeated. Mondays felt like Mondays. Evenings felt like evenings. Time moved forward gently, without sudden shifts. Seasonal changes altered the light, but not the rhythm. Winter mornings were darker. Summer evenings stretched longer. Yet the whistle remained constant, anchoring the day regardless of the season. For children growing up in the town, this repetition created a deep sense of stability. They learned when to wake, when to eat, when to rest. These patterns became part of their understanding of the world for adults. The routine reduced mental strain. Decisions were fewer. Expectations were clear. This clarity allowed thoughts to quiet as evening approached. At night, after the last sounds faded, the town rested completely. The whistle no longer called anyone anywhere. Its work was finished until morning. The silence that followed felt complete, as though the day had closed a chapter. Windows darkened, streets emptied. The town slept together. As you imagine this rhythm now, allow it to guide your own breathing. Inhale with the morning whistle. Exhale with the evening's quiet. Let the predictability of the day settle your thoughts. Let repetition ease your mind. Just as the town trusted the sound that shaped its hours, you can trust the calm that carries you toward rest. The whistle fades into memory. The night remains, and sleep arrives, steady and unhurried. When the workday ended and the town's steady rhythm softened, life did not stop. It simply changed pace. Evenings and weekends opened into quieter spaces, shaped by familiarity and shared time rather than effort. These hours beyond work carried their own gentle patterns, just as important as the routines of the day. As dusk settled, families turned their attention inward. Homes filled with calm activity. Lamps were lit, meals were shared without hurry. Conversations flowed easily, shaped by shared experiences and familiar surroundings. There was comfort in knowing that others across the town were doing much the same. On certain evenings, people gathered outside their homes. Porches became places of rest. Chairs were pulled close. Neighbors greeted one another with a wave or a few quiet words. These moments did not need planning. They happened naturally, guided by the shared rhythm of the town. Churches played a steady role in this slower time. Their doors opened on predictable days, offering a place for reflection and quiet gathering. The sound of bells or soft singing marked these moments without calling for urgency. Inside, the atmosphere was calm, supportive, and familiar. Schools also remained part of life beyond formal lessons. They hosted meetings, events, and occasional gatherings. The same rooms that held children's voices during the day became spaces for adults in the evening. This continuity added to the feeling that the town's spaces were shared and understood. Social halls provided another gentle outlet. These buildings were simple, designed for gathering rather than display. People met there for modest events, community dinners, music played softly, or discussions that moved at an unhurried pace. No one rushed in or out. Time stretched comfortably. Children found their own ways to spend these hours. They played along familiar streets, always within sight of home. Their laughter drifted through the air, blending with the town's evening sounds. As night approached, they returned easily, guided by routine rather than reminders. Weekends brought a slight shift, but not a disruption. Work paused, yet the town's rhythm remained. Mornings began calmly. Afternoons unfolded slowly. There was time for rest, for visiting, for small tasks completed without pressure. Community closeness was felt most clearly during these quieter hours. People recognized one another not just as co-workers, but as neighbors. Shared schedules meant shared experiences. There was an unspoken understanding of the town's flow. Even quiet evenings at home held a collective quality. Though families rested separately, they did so together in time. Lights dimmed across the town at similar hours. The sense of shared rest created a feeling of connection without effort. Seasonal events added gentle variation. Holidays were observed simply, marked by familiar traditions rather than spectacle. These occasions brought people together without disturbing the town's calm foundation. The closeness of the community did not demand constant interaction. There was room for solitude, quiet walks, evenings spent reading or listening to the night. The shared schedule allowed these private moments to exist comfortably alongside communal ones. As the years passed, these patterns became memories layered gently upon one another. The town carried them forward, holding the echo of shared evenings and familiar gatherings. At night, after social spaces closed and homes settled into silence, the town felt whole. Nothing was left undone. The day had moved through its complete cycle, from work to rest, from activity to stillness. As you imagine this time now, picture a town at ease with itself, lights glowing softly, voices fading, doors closing gently, everyone knowing that tomorrow will follow the same calm pattern. In this quiet beyond work hours, the town found its deeper rhythm, the one that supported rest, connection, and a sense of belonging. And as the town grows still, you are invited to share in that calm. Let the gentle nostalgia carry you. Let the shared quiet guide you toward sleep, steady and untroubled. In the company town, time moved forward gently, carried not only by days and seasons, but by families growing and changing within familiar surroundings. Life unfolded in a steady sequence, where one generation followed another along well-known paths. Shaped by routine and continuity, children were born into these towns already held by structure. From their earliest days, they absorbed the rhythm of the place without effort. Mornings began at predictable times. Evenings settled into quiet. The sounds of the town, the whistle, footsteps, distant voices became part of their understanding of normal life. As children grew, they attended local schools located within easy walking distance of home. The route to school was familiar and safe, repeated day after day. They learned the shape of the streets, the timing of the day, and the comfort of returning home each afternoon. These routines offered a sense of security that required no explanation. Classrooms held children from the same neighborhoods, often from families who had known one another for years. Teachers recognized not just students, but siblings and parents as well. This continuity created a gentle sense of belonging, where learning felt connected to the wider life of the town. After school, children played along the same streets they walked each morning. Games unfolded in predictable places. Voices echoed briefly, then faded as evening approached. There was an unspoken understanding of when playtime ended and rest began. As years passed, children grew into young adults without leaving the landscape they knew. Many followed familiar paths into work, stepping into roles that had been part of town life long before them. The transition felt natural rather than sudden, supported by the steady presence of family and community. Parents watched this progression with quiet recognition. They had once walked the same streets, attended the same schools, and entered work through similar routines. Life did not feel rushed. It unfolded gradually, marked by shared experiences rather than sharp change. Generations overlapped comfortably. Grandparents lived near children and grandchildren. Stories were shared not as distant history, but as lived memory. The town itself held these memories, its buildings and streets unchanged, anchoring the passage of time. Meals brought families together regularly. The same tables were used year after year. Conversations repeated familiar themes. There was comfort in this repetition, a sense that life did not require constant reinvention. Holidays and milestones followed predictable patterns. Birthdays, graduations, and quiet celebrations marked time without disrupting routine. These moments were recognized gently, woven into the ongoing rhythm of daily life. Children learned expectations through observation rather than instruction. They saw when adults woke, worked, rested, and slept. These patterns became internalized, shaping habits that lasted into adulthood. The town supported this continuity by remaining largely unchanged. Streets stayed the same. Buildings held their places. Familiar landmarks guided each generation without effort. This stability allowed families to focus on living rather than adjusting. As parents aged, they passed responsibilities quietly to the next generation. Work roles shifted. Homes changed occupants. Yet the overall rhythm continued uninterrupted. The town carried these transitions smoothly. At night, families rested knowing that tomorrow would follow the same gentle structure. Children fell asleep to familiar sounds. Adults closed their eyes with confidence in routine. The shared schedule across generations reinforced the sense of safety. The repetition of daily life created a deep familiarity that soothed the mind. There were few surprises, few disruptions. This predictability allowed rest to come easily night after night. Over time, the town became a living record of its families. Each generation left subtle marks, worn steps, planted trees, memories attached to familiar places. Yet the overall shape remains steady. As you imagine this continuity now, picture a town where children grow, adults work, and elders rest, all within the same calm framework. Time moves forward without haste. Let the sense of generational rhythm settle into your thoughts. Life unfolds gently, one day following another, supported by routine and familiarity. And as the town rests tonight, held by generations of steady living, you are invited to rest as well, comforted by the quiet knowledge that continuity endures, and sleep arrives naturally when the world feels known. As time passed, the company town revealed itself not as a collection of separate parts, but as a single living system. Everything within it moved together: housing, work, commerce, and social life, each element supporting the others in a steady, repeating cycle. Nothing stood alone. Everything belonged. In the morning, the town stirred gently. Homes released their occupants into the streets. Paths filled briefly, then cleared. Workplaces awakened as homes grew quiet. This exchange happened daily, smooth and predictable, like a slow breath in and out. Housing provided more than shelter. It marked the beginning and end of each day. Doors opened in the morning and closed again at night, holding the rhythm of waking and resting. The placement of homes shaped how people moved, how they returned, how they settled. Work existed at the center of the system, not as a disruption, but as a steady anchor. Its schedule guided the town's pulse. When work began, the town focused. When it ended, the town softened. This clarity allowed energy to gather and then release without strain. Commerce flowed naturally between home and work. The store did not demand attention. It fit quietly into daily routes. Supplies were gathered, routines maintained, and life continued without interruption. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was missing. Social life filled the spaces between these activities. Conversations happened along sidewalks. Gatherings formed in familiar places. Shared schedules meant shared moments, unfolding without effort or planning. The town connected people gently, without pressing them together. Each part of the town responded to the others. When work paused, homes became active. When evening arrived, social spaces grew quiet. When night deepened, everything rested together. The system adjusted smoothly, maintaining balance. Children moved easily within this structure. School fit between home and play. Learning followed the same steady rhythm as work. Even leisure mirrored the larger pattern, active for a time, then quiet again. The town's design supported this flow. Streets guided movement. Buildings stood where they were needed. Open spaces allowed pauses. The physical environment reinforced the system's calm operation. Seasonal changes moved through the town without disruption. Winter shortened days, but the rhythm remained. Summer stretched evenings, yet rest still arrived. The system adapted naturally, absorbing change without stress. Over time, residents stopped noticing the system consciously. It simply worked. Life unfolded with minimal effort. Decisions were few. Expectations were clear. This ease allowed the mind to rest even during waking hours. The town did not demand constant attention. It held people gently, allowing them to move through days with familiarity and confidence. The system supported rather than challenged them. At night, the system reached its quietest point. Homes darkened, streets emptied, commerce paused, work rested, social life softened into stillness. Everything aligned toward rest. This nightly pause was not an ending, but part of the cycle. The town knew how to be still, just as it knew how to move. Silence belonged as much as activity. Imagine the town from above in these hours. Lights scattered softly, buildings resting in place, streets calm and empty. The system breathing slowly, complete and untroubled. As morning would eventually return, the cycle would begin again without effort. But for now, the town remains at rest, held by its own balance. As you listen, allow this image to settle in your thoughts. A place where everything works together, where nothing is out of step, where rest is as natural as motion, Let your breathing follow this gentle cycle. Inhale as the town awakens. Exhale as it settles again. The town continues its quiet rhythm. And within that rhythm, you are free to rest, supported by the calm assurance that everything is moving exactly as it should. Change did not arrive suddenly in the company town. It came quietly, almost without notice, like a gradual shift in the weather. There were no sharp sounds to mark its beginning, no single moment that stood apart. Instead, life began to slow in small, gentle ways. The factory still opened each morning, but its pace softened. The familiar whistle sounded, though sometimes with a slightly different tone or at a slightly altered hour. Inside, machines continued their steady work, yet there was less urgency in their movement. Time stretched a little longer between tasks. Families noticed the change not through announcements, but through absence. A neighbor moved away. A home stood empty a bit longer than usual. Windows that once glowed each evening remained dark. The town adjusted quietly, absorbing these changes without disruption. Shifts shortened. Days ended a little earlier. The streets grew calmer sooner in the afternoon. Evenings felt longer, filled with more silence than before. The stillness was not unsettling. It felt like a natural deepening of quiet. The company store remained open. Its shelves still stocked, though visits became less frequent. Familiar routines continued, but at a slower pace. There was no rush to replace what had been lost. The town simply moved differently. Children noticed the change in subtle ways. Classrooms felt quieter. Fewer footsteps echoed along hallways. Playgroups grew smaller, yet the structure of the day remained intact, offering reassurance through continuity. Homes that once held busy families began to rest. Curtains stayed closed. Porches gathered dust. These buildings did not decay. They simply waited, holding the memory of past routines. The factory itself grew quieter as production eased. Sounds softened. Steam rose less often. At night, its presence faded into the background more completely than before. Season after season, the slowing continued. The town did not resist. It adapted by releasing what was no longer needed. Life became simpler, more inward. Some families chose to stay, drawn by familiarity and calm. Others moved on gently, carrying their routines elsewhere. The town accepted both choices without struggle, even as numbers decreased. The rhythm of daily life remained steady. Mornings and evenings still followed their patterns. Sleep arrived on time. The town's structure continued to support rest. Nature began to assert itself more visibly. Grass grew along unused paths. Trees stretched their branches a little farther. The land and the town settled into a quieter partnership. At night, silence deepened. The absence of activity allowed stillness to fill every space. This quiet felt complete rather than empty, like a long pause between breaths. As you imagine this place now, picture a town resting more than working. Buildings stand calmly. Streets hold fewer footsteps. The air feels unhurried. This was not an ending, but a gentle transition, a slowing rather than a stopping. The town learned how to be quiet in a new way, and in that quiet, rest found deeper ground. Just as the town softened its pace, you are invited to soften yours. Let the image of gradual slowing ease your thoughts. Let the silence expand comfortably. Nothing is required now. The day has passed. The town rests. And so can you. When the machines finally fell silent, the change was almost imperceptible. There was no dramatic moment to mark the shift, no single sound that announced an ending. Instead, quiet settled gently over the town, filling the spaces where steady noise once lived. The absence felt calm rather than empty, like the pause after a long and well-completed day. The streets remained exactly where they had always been. Straight roads stretched into the distance, familiar and unhurried. Without the regular movement of daily routines, they seemed to breathe more deeply. Leaves gathered along curbs. Sunlight lingered longer on open pavement. The town revealed a softer face. Buildings stood patiently, holding their shapes without effort. Factories, once active, now rested in stillness. Windows reflected the sky instead of interior light. Brick walls warmed slowly in the sun and cooled again at night. Nothing rushed them anymore. Homes continued to shelter those who remained. Lights appeared in some windows at night, fewer than before, but no less steady. Inside, routines adjusted without disruption. Life continued at a quieter pace, shaped by the same structures that had always supported it. Some buildings found new purposes. A former workspace became storage, a meeting place, or simply a quiet structure holding memories. Schools remained schools, even with fewer voices. Churches continued to open their doors, offering the same calm presence as before. Other buildings simply stood, unclaimed by new roles, but not forgotten. Time moved through them gently. Dust settled. Paint faded. These changes did not feel like loss, but like a natural deepening of stillness. Nature slowly reintroduced itself. Grass grew taller along paths once traveled daily. Trees extended their branches toward empty spaces. Birds nested where human activity had lessened. The land and the town began a quiet conversation. The town's outline remained clear from a distance. Roof lines traced the horizon. Streets formed their familiar grid. Even without movement, the structure felt complete. The design held, offering clarity and order long after activity faded. At night, the town grew especially peaceful. Fewer lights meant darker skies. Stars appeared more clearly. The quiet felt expansive, unbroken by schedules or signals. Sleep came easily to those who remained, supported by the deep stillness. Walking through such a town, one could feel time layered gently rather than stacked heavily. Past routines lingered like soft echoes, not demanding attention. Memories rested within the buildings, content to remain where they were. There was no pressure to restore or replace what had been lost. The town accepted its new rhythm. Stillness became part of its identity, just as activity once had been. Seasonal changes passed through without interruption. Snow settled on empty streets. Leaves gathered in corners. Rain washed surfaces clean. The town aged gracefully, moving in harmony with the natural world. Those who visited felt a quiet respect for the place. Voices lowered naturally. Movements slowed. The town seemed to invite calm observation rather than explanation. As you imagine this place now, picture a town resting within itself. Streets empty but purposeful. Buildings quiet but present. Time moving slowly, without urgency. This is not an ending, but a continuation in another form. The town remains part of the landscape, holding its shape and memory without effort. And as the machines remain silent, the town teaches a gentle lesson in rest. Activity is not always required. Stillness can be complete. Let this image settle into your thoughts. Let the quiet expand comfortably around you. The town rests, and within its calm, you are free to rest as well. Long after the busiest days had passed, the company towns did not disappear. They remain sometimes as small, living communities, sometimes as quiet historical places, and sometimes only as faint impressions held in memory. Their presence endured in gentle ways, shaped not by activity, but by continuity. In some towns, people stayed. They continued to live in the same houses, walk the same streets, and greet the same neighbors. Life became quieter, but it did not end. Gardens were tended. Doors opened and closed. Lights still appeared in windows at night. The town adapted to a new pace. Without losing its identity. Other towns shifted into places of reflection. Former factories stood as landmarks, no longer producing goods, but holding stories. Schools, churches, and homes became reminders of shared routines rather than daily necessities. Visitors arrived quietly, walking slowly, observing rather than changing. Historical markers appeared in some places, offering simple explanations without drama. They pointed out what once was, allowing the town to be understood without being disturbed. These signs blended into the landscape, respectful of the stillness around them. In certain towns, only fragments remained. A foundation visible beneath grass, a road leading nowhere in particular, a single building standing alone. Even these partial remains carried meaning. They suggested presence rather than absence. Memories lived on in families who had moved elsewhere. Stories were told softly, passed from one generation to the next. These recollections were not urgent. They surfaced gently, often during quiet moments. The endurance of these towns was not measured in productivity, but in persistence. Streets continued to trace their original paths. Buildings held their shapes. The land remembered where people had once gathered. Nature and history coexisted easily. Trees grew alongside old structures. Fields spread into former work areas. The town's outline remained visible beneath layers of time. At night, These places held a special calm. Without noise or schedules, the quiet felt complete. Stars reflected off old windows. Wind moved through empty spaces, carrying no message other than presence. For those who returned after many years, the familiarity was comforting. Even changed, the town felt recognizable. The sense of order, of planned space, remained. These echoes were not loud. They did not demand attention. They existed quietly, waiting to be noticed by those who paused long enough. As you imagine these towns now, picture places that continue simply by existing. Not forgotten, not fully active, but steady. Endurance does not always require motion. Sometimes it means holding shape, holding memory, holding space. These towns continue in that way, calm, patient, and present. Let that sense of quiet endurance settle into your thoughts. Life does not need to be busy to be complete. The echoes remain, and within them, there is rest. As the story of the company town gently comes to rest, what remains are not arguments or conclusions, but quiet lessons that settled into the landscape and stayed there. These lessons were never announced. They were learned slowly, through daily experience, repetition, and time. One lesson was about work. In these towns, work was not distant or abstract. It was part of the physical environment, visible and understood. The beginning and end of the workday were clear. This clarity helped separate effort from rest, allowing both to exist without blending into one another. When work ended, it truly ended. Another lesson was about routine. Life followed patterns that repeated day after day. These patterns were not exciting, but they were grounding. They allowed people to move through their days without constant decision-making. This reduced mental strain and created space for rest. Community was another quiet teacher. People lived close enough to recognize one another's rhythms. Shared schedules meant shared understanding. There was no need for constant interaction to feel connected. Simply knowing others followed the same patterns was enough. Shared space mattered deeply. Streets, stores, schools, and gathering places were designed to be used together. These spaces encouraged natural encounters without forcing them. The town supported both togetherness and solitude, allowing balance. The design of the town itself offered lessons in simplicity. Buildings served clear purposes. Decoration was restrained. Everything had a place. This simplicity translated into a sense of ease that carried into daily life. Another lesson came from change. When activity slowed and industries faded, the towns did not vanish. They adapted. They became quieter versions of themselves. This showed that usefulness can shift without meaning being lost. Time itself became a teacher. The steady passage of days, seasons, and generations revealed that continuity does not require constant growth. Stability can exist in stillness. These lessons did not belong only to the past. They continue quietly in the present, influencing how people think about work-life balance, community design, and shared rhythms. Without debate or urgency, they offer perspective. The company town demonstrated that structure can support calm, that predictability can be comforting, that rest is not a reward, but a natural part of living. As modern life grows faster and more complex, these quiet lessons remain available. They do not demand change. They simply invite reflection. Imagine carrying these lessons forward gently, allowing work to have boundaries, allowing routines to support rather than restrict, allowing shared spaces to feel welcoming rather than crowded. In this final moment, the story does not push forward. It settles. Just as the towns once did at night, everything comes to rest naturally. There is nothing left to explain, nothing left to resolve. The lessons remain, carried quietly forward in memory and design, offering calm understanding rather than instruction. And now, as the story closes, you are invited to rest as well, held by the same gentle rhythm, the same quiet acceptance, and the same sense that everything, for this moment, is exactly as it should be.